Welcome to my channel, Atieno the lawyer, and today is Mentorship Wednesday. We're going to be talking about how to study in Ivy League universities, and joining me today is one of my mentors. She's called Emmah. She's a friend, a confidant, everything, and she's studying in Harvard, by the way, and doing her PhD at Cambridge, so I know she'll have a wealth of information to share with us. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, share your comment, and also share it widely so that people can gain information. And in your comments also give us suggestions of who you would like to come and grace this channel and give more useful information to our youth and to everyone who's looking to grow in their personal space. Today, we are having our guest, Emmah Wabuke. She's one of my mentors, a very distinguished, I can say distinguished scholar. She's going to give us her bio before we start our conversation. So welcome, Emmah.
Thank you very much, Atieno, and thank you for having me as well to participate in this.
So I have known you as my mentor, and I met you in a different space. But I can say since we met, we haven't shared so much that I can say I know you very well. So maybe you could tell us more about yourself and share with the viewers who you are.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Emmah Wabuke. I am a lawyer by profession. I studied at the University of Nairobi for my bachelor's degree, and I did my master's at Harvard Law School, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD studies at the University of Cambridge. I'm a Gates Cambridge scholar to that effect. I have practiced in the academic sector of the legal profession. So I was formerly a lecturer at Strathmore Law School in Nairobi, where I also founded the Strathmore Law Clinic, which is really a student practice organization that attempts to provide pro bono legal aid service for the underserved communities across Nairobi and across really Kenya as a whole. So that's me in a nutshell. I like French fries, but I don't think that's important for the bio, but I like just to put it out there.
Okay, thank you so much, Emmah. I think now everyone understands why you're very important to this discussion, because today I wanted to talk about mentorship in terms of mentoring those who want to pursue maybe a master's or degrees abroad, and generally about navigating through the legal career, maybe your perspectives now. And that's why the next question will be, okay, your career and professional journey, like what are the challenges maybe you have encountered from undergrad till now that you're doing your PhD in the legal space?
Okay, so I guess my career journey, like I've stated, it's been more in the academic sector of things. So I am an academic. In that regard, I have not practiced as much in the traditional sense of working in a law firm as much as other people have. And I guess some of the challenges that I have faced as a young academic is obviously most people will speak on just the opportunities to really grow and advance in that academic space. There's not so much. Academia is very hierarchical. It's full of a lot of hierarchies in terms of exposure. Now I have to be honest and say that at least the former dean or the founding dean of Strathmore Law School attempted to really shift that negativity by recruiting very many young people, including myself, to be part of the academic space. But that doesn't necessarily change the whole outlook of academia as a very hierarchical space in which sometimes opportunities to publish and to share your research is not as it's harder if you're a young academic. And I would think that's predominantly the most pressing challenge in the academic space.
Wow, I only thought it is in practicing of law. Is it in terms of age or in terms of how much you studied that you're being discriminated?
I think it's just in terms of a little bit of both, right? Because it's all connected. Because typically younger people have practiced less, right? It's just the way that the world works. And so because of that, then there's some element of, it's just that much harder to publish. You must put in more effort in that way. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there are no opportunities for a young person to publish or to explore their research work. It's just a little bit harder because the young person would not, the young academic would not typically be as well known as a more established academic. And people gravitate towards the more famous, the more renowned, the more well-known, and that probably is one of the bigger challenges that young academics face. And the only way sort of to cure that, I think, and I've tried to do it together with other young colleagues, especially the ones I worked with at Strathmore, is that to create your own spaces of publishing. And so what young academics are eventually, the ones I've worked with, including young students who are interested in the academic space, is actually creating forums for themselves to be able to publish and to be able to explore their unique research works.
Okay, that's really awesome. And also about your career journey, I remember you told me there was a time you were lecturing at University of Pretoria. So maybe you could tell us the spaces you've worked at and how it has been for you working in those different spaces.
Yeah, well, it's not that, well, I do not have a wide sort of breadth of lecturing beyond Strathmore Law School. I have participated in certain spaces, especially through research colloquia and something like that, through like the University of Pretoria, which you mentioned, in which I participated in a research colloquium. I've also sort of done some visiting lecturer sort of kind of works in several other universities and colleges, and especially when there's a meeting point in terms of collaboration. So for example, Kenyatta University is a flagship sort of home to Trade Lab, which is a student practice organization originally based in Geneva, but the Kenyan version is hosted by Kenyatta University, and I happen to participate in that by giving lectures in that particular forum. I've also so that's essentially been my career journey, trying to explore teaching and mentoring in spaces beyond my direct employer, which is Strathmore University, is really trying to explore how I could essentially teach in other spaces and how I could interact with students in different spaces. I think I would have really, one of the maybe small regrets that I have is that I did not explore students from other types of backgrounds and not necessarily legal backgrounds, because I happen to think that a multidisciplinary approach to the law is always the best way to do things, a socio-legal approach to the law. So I would have really appreciated forums in which I could speak to political science students or economic students who would also have, who would really sort of enable me, empower me in a way to really think of new forums of problem solving.
Wow. I love the fact that you're so much into mentorship and in fact imparting knowledge to the younger generation. Maybe now is when I could ask you, do you have a mentor, and how has your mentor also influenced who you are right now?
Yeah, so I do have mentors, and if mentorship is understood not in this formalistic way that we do it, that you have to enroll in a certain mentorship program and be a mentor. If we understand mentorship in a more broader sense, then I would definitely have to agree that I do have a mentor. And one of the chief mentors that I do have is actually she's called Wanjiru Ngige. She's a partner at Mohammed Muigai Advocates. I met her in 2014 when I just started my academic career at Strathmore, and she was lecturing at the time at Strathmore Law School, and she's been fundamentally instrumental in how I approach my career. She's been really the linchpin, I think, towards the career decisions that I've been making across for a long time now. And that she really, I think the trick with a good mentor is really listening to the mentee and figuring out what exactly they need, even if the mentee is not directly articulating that or clearly articulating what exactly their needs and their wants are. And Wanjiru did that for me, understanding where my wants and my needs are and really guiding me towards that, achieving that potential. So I really do owe a lot to her and really her assistance. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice, and I can say for sure also having you always talk to me, I think I've benefited. Not I think I have benefited a lot. I think also maybe you could share your area of research for your PhD and maybe why you thought that and how you've connected it with what you did at Harvard Law School.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So during my master's studies, actually starting with the application for my master's studies at Harvard, I was already interested in the intersection between gender and violent extremism, and specifically looking into female militancy in terrorist groups. I was very interested in looking into why women would be motivated to join terrorist groups across sub-Saharan Africa. Part of the interest, of course, was sparked by the Chibok girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram, and then allegations that came forward that these girls were then being used as suicide bombers by Boko Haram. And so that got me a bit interested in looking into the dimensions between gender and violent extremism, and I sort of wrote that as part of my thesis in my master's program, and I thought it would be interesting. My master's program, my master's thesis actually left a lot of questions unanswered. It's only when I reread it later on that I thought I really didn't answer all the questions that I sought to, and so I thought it would be best to be explored in a PhD setting. And so actually during my PhD journey, I hope to actually research again on the question of female militancy, but this time looking into the reintegration processes that these women undergo once they have left Al-Shabaab. And this time my area of focus is really Al-Shabaab terrorist group and not necessarily a general observation of terrorist groups working across sub-Saharan Africa. So I am looking into and researching into women, especially female militants, former female militants of Al-Shabaab, and how they respond to, or at least how they, the challenges that they face attempting to reintegrate into society once they've left the terrorist group.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to the answers that you'll get.
I'm looking forward to them as well. Yeah,
maybe you could also share, like, how did you get to go to Harvard and now Cambridge? I know many people want to go to these Ivy League universities, including me. I think I shared with you about that. So how did you get to go there?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when I'm asked those questions, because it's I think 90% luck than anything else.
Really?
Maybe a little bit of support on the affirmative action programs in the US and the UK. I don't know, but genuinely, I just applied. I guess that was it. I just applied. I was extremely confused about where to apply. I knew I always wanted to do a master's. So, for example, for my Harvard journey, I knew I always wanted to do a master's. I just did not know where. I did not know on what. I was extremely confused on that basis. And then my boss at the time, that's the founding dean of Strathmore Law School. He's now at the Commonwealth. Professor Luis Franceschi called me one time and said, "You know what? I think you should really apply to Stanford." So Stanford had never occurred to me as a place I would apply to. Actually, nothing had applied to me or had occurred to me, but where I was going to apply to, right? I had no clue. I was completely out of, I just didn't know where I wanted to go. So he said that. And I thought to myself, let me look into Stanford, actually, what the hullabaloo about Stanford is after all, right? So let me look into Stanford. And literally, when I was walking out of his office after he told me that, I bumped bumped into somebody, and she was just coming into an interview at Strathmore, and then she pointed out, oh yeah, I've just graduated from Harvard, and suddenly something just occurred in me, and I said, well, maybe I should look into Harvard more than Stanford, and so I did. I actually just put in the application. I put in the application late. That is the crazy part of this whole entire story, because I was doing KSL at the time, Kenya School of Law, and it was in 2015, and it was a particularly difficult time in my life. But just for whatever reason, I was going through, borderline depression and it just burnout for whatever reason. I think combining KSL and work was not just working. Yeah, KSL is stressful, and then work is stressful, and I wasn't really working very well at that particular point. So I did sort of everything last minute, and I put in my application later than after the deadline, right? So I submitted the online application in time, but the documents and all the other supporting documentation that they require, that came after the deadline. And I just did not expect to get the call, to get the email that I'd gotten in, right? So because I thought for sure I'd messed it up. So I applied to a safety school, which is always advice that I give everybody. Always have a safety school, and my safety school was NYU. That's New York University, School of Law. And so I applied to NYU as well.
So all these were through scholarships?
Yes, all these were through scholarships. I could not. University education in America is ridiculous. It's extremely expensive. There is absolutely no way, unless my father is a successful entrepreneur of sorts, or there's no way I would have ever afforded it. And so anyway, so I put in the application as well to NYU. Of course, I did it also after the deadline, because at that point I was just so confused. And so flash forward a couple of months later, maybe 4 or 5 months later, I get the email. I remember I was actually at one of my very good friends' house. At that time I was working I was doing my pupillage at Mohammed Mugai Advocates, and I'd just come from the office at about 9 p.m. and I stopped over at my friend's house. He lived in the street across from my house, and I stopped over at his house because he had invited me for dinner, and it was gonna be free dinner. So as we were talking, then I got the notification from Harvard that I'd actually gotten into Harvard, and then a week later I got the notification that I got into NYU. Now the thing about American universities is that you first get the notification that you've been chosen, and then you've got to wait for the scholarship decision. And then so I waited. The NYU scholarship decision put me on a wait list, but the one for Harvard actually took me with the scholarship. So it became a no-brainer really on which of the two I would have selected, and so that's how I ended up in Harvard. Wow. So it's a combination of luck and maybe a little bit of effort. God, if you believe in him or her, whatever. But mostly it was, it was just a combination of things that happened. Yeah.
So going to Ivy League universities, is it that you have to have good grades on your transcript, or as you're saying, it's just a matter of luck?
Yeah, well, no, not completely luck, and I wouldn't want to take it away from the effort and the hard work and the commitment that's actually required for you to even be considered to an Ivy League university. But I think predominantly you don't only need good grades. You need good grades to not. There's no compromise on that basis, right? Good grades, but then you need something more that takes you sort of over over and above everybody else, because everyone else is applying and everyone got good grades too, right? So you need something more. You need more diversity in your experience, and so the diversity can come in different ways, right? You could have participated in student practice organizations in when you are doing your undergraduate, so you could have done a law clinic project, you could have participated in moot court competitions, you could have written papers in law reviews and stuff like that. So that all shows diversity of experience. But even beyond that, you must show that you've contributed to the community and that you will continuously contribute to the community. It's the biggest thing, I think, in applying for an Ivy League university. I had a friend of mine, Desmond, he comes from the British Virgin Islands, and he told me the way that he wrote his personal statement is that he's a magician. So for the longest time in his life, he did magic, and then he figured out, let me do law as well, right? So he's a magician, and in his personal statement, he linked the work he's done in magic to the law, and he linked both of them, and he was selected. And actually, he was given even a shout out by the then Dean Martha Mino during her opening address to the new sort of graduates in Harvard. And the idea there is that it showed diversity of experience, right? That he's just not a lawyer; he's a magician as well. And there's so many stories like that in Harvard. There's one of my other friends was a bartender. He comes from Chile. He was a bartender for the longest time, and he makes the best cocktails, like legitimately the best cocktails. He still has the skill, and yet then he figured out, oh, let me do law as well, yeah, right? So it's really that you must show that diversity of experience, and also how you're positively contributing to the community. I think one of the things, if you read, there's a book called On the Battlefield of Merit, and it talks about the history of Harvard Law School. And in this book, the professor who wrote it, and I can never pronounce his surname, so I won't do it, goes something like Coculate or something like that. But the professor who wrote the book talked about in 1924, when the Harvard Law School Master's Program was being conceived. It was being conceived in a way that, first of all, they wanted to bring all people from all over the world to come and receive this excellent education from Harvard, but most importantly also to be able to contribute, to go back to their homes and contribute positively to their communities. So I think that's the biggest link, in which if you really want to have, if you want to really have a good application to an Ivy League university, to any university really, is that you must show how the knowledge you have gained or you will gain will actually positively contribute to the community. If it doesn't, if it's all for your own benefit, then it's not appealing. It's not appealing. It doesn't go to the core of why master's programs have been conceived by several universities the world over.
Wow. I love that you've answered it very conclusively. Now people have tips, they've had it, and they should not be, praising themselves, how good they are. They show what they're going to do with the knowledge. In
the community, yes. And a lot of volunteering, mentoring. It's just some of the ways in which you show how you can actually actively contribute to the community.
Yeah, the next question I was going to ask you is how do you encourage innovative ideas? But you've already talked about, how you founded the Strathmore Law Clinic. Maybe you could share with us what the Strathmore Law Clinic is all about.
Yeah. So the Strathmore Law Clinic, this is also sort of a byproduct of my Harvard experience, where the really U.S. universities, U.S. law schools, believe in law clinics as student practice organizations where the students, supervised by faculty, provide pro bono legal advice in different spaces. And so really then I went through, or at least I did a couple of law clinics when I was doing my master's program, and I thought to myself, this would be an excellent experience to have. Now, there have always been law clinics in Kenya. University of Nairobi, for example, has SALA, but for whatever reason, as days went by, or as decades passed by, then it really lost its steam, and I thought, maybe I'm in a unique position to revitalize that steam, and that's why I established the Strathmore Law Clinic. And the clinic has been able to participate in several pro bono legal projects. And what's interesting about the clinic is that it's really, whereas I provided the guidance and the supervision, it was really a student-led project where students themselves would be able to go out into the community and see the need, for the legal need that really is in communities, and then try to figure out a project to help and to start at least to deal with that need. And so the Strathmore Law Clinic is uniquely, I think, one of my sort of really proudest moments is really establishing and being part of that clinic, and being part really of an incredible team of students, really looking and internalizing the law as a catalyst for social change.
I mean, that's really dope. I don't know if it's right to say dope, but that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And the next question we'd like to ask to talk about is what do you do to constantly challenge your beliefs and your assumptions? Because I know studying abroad, challenges everything you believe as an African.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think it's always, if I was a politician or things like that, I would firmly be, ideologically speaking, I would firmly be in the liberal space of ideologies. I'm a family in the liberal space, not at the far left space, but probably in the progressive space of things. And one of the cardinal tenets, I think, of any progressive is that you must learn and train yourself to listen to different ideas.
Yeah.
It is a requirement. And then top that liberal nature in me with the academic in me, where it is also, I believe, a tenet of every academic to listen to ideas that they do not like.
Yeah.
It is the way the academic world and universities specifically are made. The whole bedrock of universities is collating different types of ideas for problem solving.
Yeah.
So I think the way I challenge myself, or the way that I go about figuring out innovative ideas, is just by listening to different types of ideas. It's literally just by active listening to different types of ideas. It's incredible when you listen to people's ideas, how much you get to learn.
Wow.
And so, and this has been a skill for me, right? This has been something that I've constantly been working on, because I typically talk too much, as you've noticed, and I typically like stories a bit too much. But one of the things as well, when I came into my own ideological space, and also when I came into, and I continuously grew into the academic self, then I continuously started learning about listening to people's ideas, listening to different ideas, and just not being afraid of ideas. I think we've, Atieno, I think we live in a world, because it's so polarized, that we live in a world where people are afraid of ideas.
Yeah.
It's almost as if ideas are the worst things that could ever happen. No, you shoot me and you do all kinds of evil things to me, but do not give me a different idea from myself. I cannot stand ideas, and I've never quite understood that. I am not, of course, one to dismiss questions around safe space and things like that. I'm not that kind of critic. I do believe of the necessity of safe spaces and things like that, but not spaces to prevent different ideas. And this is really across the board, right? This is some liberal people are afraid of ideas. Conservative people are definitely afraid of ideas. Everybody's afraid of ideas. And I just think when if we reach a point when we are afraid of ideas, then we'll never truly develop. It's not just listening to people's ideas doesn't mean that you outrightly accept them, but it also gives you a space in thinking differently. And so what I try to do increasingly is just to listen, to really listen. Not to listen so that I can disagree, because that's a whole other thing. That's a thing I've learned, I've seen with lawyers, right? We listen to disagree. We listen so that we can get to respond. We don't listen to actually learn something, to understand, And the best example of this, and why lawyers are guilty of this, is if you've just hear the debate of the 2/3 gender rule and what the CJ Maraga has done by advising the president to dissolve parliament. And so it's so interesting, on my Twitter feed, timeline, I don't know what they call it, I think they call it timeline or feed, whatever it is, but it's so interesting to listen and to see people commenting, oh, does shall mean this, and does advise mean this, and all kinds of arguments, right? All kinds of legalist arguments around it, and nobody is actually listening to the women and the activists who worked for years to make sure that this rule is not only put in the constitution, but it is also implemented. They're the ones who are organizing. When all of us were quiet doing our own things, they were the ones on the front lines organizing. They're the ones who are really making sure that the government reaches its end of the deal. They're the ones who pressured CJ Maraga for the advice. But now nobody is listening to them. And everybody wants to argue about Charlene advice. So it's just that, right? Because it's a thing that lawyers have. We listen to respond and we don't listen to actually learn something. And it's extremely frustrating. So how I try to tackle innovative ideas is actually listening. I could never be as innovative as half the people that I meet. You know, I could never be as innovative as sometimes I'm wowed by one of my closest friends. The mother is an artist. She can literally sit down here and in 1 hour she has drawn us. Wow. Literally she has just drawn us. I said, how does that work? If you ask me to draw something, I'm going to draw like a nursery school kid, right? The stick kind of things. And it's amazing to listen to her and think of her thought process, you know, about how she goes about drawing. It's ridiculous. And that's the thing. Let's listen to different ideas. How we develop innovative ideas is that if we listen to different ideas from our own, so that we don't just listen to ideas that amplify our base, but really listening to ideas that change how we actually think. And that goes to the earlier point that I made, is that I wish I could interact way more with students who are not necessarily students of the law. I think political scientists just have a way of conceiving and thinking through problems that lawyers can learn a lot from. Sure. I listen to a lot of historians speak, and I really wonder why lawyers we think we're the smartest of the bunch, right? Because it's really the way that they think through problem solving. It's so fundamentally important. It's so unique. It's so clever. And so I think that's the point, right? Developing multidisciplinary spaces in which, and that's how we start coming up with even more innovative ideas. And I could talk about ideas all day and how we think through, and how law does not have any new idea. Law has no new idea, and we have to look at the sociologists, and we have to look at the economists and the political scientists and the artists and the musicians to really get the innovative ideas. Wow. Lawyer, we're done. Yeah, that's what I think anyway. Yeah.
I was almost talking about now. African universities do not encourage much of publishing and innovativeness, and that's why you see, even if you've done a bachelor's degree in Kenya and you've done it abroad, there's so much difference in terms of now your thought process.
There's definitely, I think, one of the things I've also noticed about different universities is as well, where exactly the point that you've made is that some universities abroad have a way of appreciating different ideas. There's nothing. One of my professors, who's also a very good mentor of mine, Professor Jack Goldsmith, very interesting guy. He's definitely on the conservative space of things. He worked in the George W. Bush administration. Very nice guy. And the first time I approached him to supervise my dissertation, my thesis, and he's a national security expert, probably the one of the best national security experts. And when I approached him, and my dissertation was purely on the African Union, and he confessed, look, I don't know anything about the African Union. Could you tell me something about it? And then so we had a discussion about it and all that. And then the next time I went to follow up on my dissertation, something, he knew more about the African Union than I did, because he had gone the extra mile to actually read about it. It's the incredible thing, I think, sometimes with universities abroad, the curiosity that sometimes professors have and academics have. They're so curious about things that are not in their immediate space. And I think that's the different thing. That's what I want to instill in myself, to just be curious about things that are not in my immediate space.
Oh, that's really, really awesome. I hope people are getting points and how they can improve themselves, because I mean, law is not everything. As much as yes, your terms as learned friends, I mean, there are more learned people out there. For sure. And I'm glad you're acknowledging that, even though you're from Harvard. It shows a lot of humility.
I just I happen to find artists and musicians a bit more smarter than us even. I just do. Of course, except the gengeton. Those ones, no, not so much. No, I'm done with those ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you've talked about one thing that you will do differently given an opportunity. Of course, it's interacting with students from all types of spheres.
Sure.
And what other thing do you think you would have done differently if you would have been told to live your life again?
Oh yeah, I think I would have. I don't know. Maybe I should have worked on my skills in rapping a bit more. I've always been thought. I've always fancied myself as a good rapper. I mean, I'm terrible at it, but it's something about fancying yourself as a good rapper. Maybe I should have worked on it a little bit more, put more effort into it. Nah, but no, seriously though, I think I would have. Probably networked a little bit more. I didn't get into the networking thing or the whole networking, the importance of networking a bit. I got into it a bit too late, I think. Well, not that late, but yeah, definitely not through my university. And a lot of my classmates as well. I was lucky. I think in so many ways I was lucky, or my fate was just written differently, that I was able to really meet the right people even without trying. And I really did not try. And I do wish that I could have networked a little bit more. I think career-wise, that probably is my biggest regret. Learning to network a bit too late into the game. Not that late, but I should have worked on it a bit more. I think, I don't know, on a more personal scale, it's something that I keep improving, is that I should call my parents a little bit more. Not text, not email, just call them a little bit more, on a more personal scale, because the way that the world works is that you are so engrossed in your own career space that sometimes you forget about the people who sort of the cardinal and the bedrock of really your base. Sometimes you do that, so I should call more and stop being a workaholic as much as I am, and not just with my parents, but probably my siblings and my friends as well.
Yeah, and I think now that you've talked about networking, some people think it's overrated. Maybe you could just really state the importance that you've seen it now and why you should have done it earlier.
Yeah, there's nothing overrated, I think, about networking. Here's the thing. There's a book I once read called Unfinished Business, and it's written by Professor Anne-Marie Slaughter, Princeton professor who's a public policy expert as well. She wrote actually a very sort of one of the best written articles in the Atlantic magazine called Why Women Cannot Have It All. And the reason I think it gained so much traction is because she wrote it as a response to Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Anyway, so the whole point of the book, in one part of the book, in Unfinished Business, Professor Anne-Marie says, the thing is that she's sat in so many job interviews, and the thing she's found out is that people hire themselves. Like, in terms of, if you're coming into an interview and you tell me you are in Harvard, I'm like, okay, go on, I was also in Harvard. And then you say, I studied human rights. I'm like, go on, I studied human rights. There's a feeling about we hire ourselves. We love hiring ourselves. And what networking does is that it gives you that leg up. You're not just hiring. It's not like it's an abstract person who has entered the interview room, and then now we are talking, and then I suddenly start seeing common ground with this person. It's actually that I know this person through networking and things like that. So networking gives you that leg up. Yes, it's true from a psychological perspective, we hire ourselves. In other words, we hire people who have the similar traits as us. But networking gives you that leg up. The other thing about networking, away from whether you are going to get the fancy jobs and not all that stuff, is that it just opens you up to to other ways of thinking. It's only through networking that I realized I actually have an interest in gender and violent extremism. I never knew I had an interest in anything like that. I never knew it could even be an interest that anyone could have, right? Yeah, it's such a unique area, merging gender and violent extremism, and it's only through networking that I was able to meet similar-minded people who validated my own interest. And so networking has a way of also personally and professionally growing you beyond whether or not you'll get the fancy job or not. It's really on a personal scale. It's such an important thing to do. Yeah.
And I know for sure, whenever I want a job in the human rights space, I just call you. If you are able to.
It would happen.
It would happen.
And that reminds me actually, and it's also networking. It's networking vertically and horizontally, and then downwards as well. Because a lot of people think it's just networking upwards, right?
True.
So it's just networking with, and that's why in a cocktail, everyone gravitates towards the CEO. The CEO will have to speak to like 10 people, right? And nobody is gravitating towards each other, right? And that's like the craziest thing of them all. Networking means you have to network on all spheres. You just don't network with the person who is the boss, but you're networking with somebody who's at the same level as you, or who's actually at a lower level than you. And one of the lessons that I learned about that was the outgoing vice dean of Harvard. I forget his name now. One time told us a story about how when he was doing his own LLM at Harvard, he was friends with an Asian sort of student, and they were friends, and they remained to be friends up until the Asian student became the Prime Minister of South Korea.
Wow.
So they've been friends. So he actually has a direct line to the President of South Korea, and that's just the whole point about networking in all spheres. I keep telling students, I think your biggest sort of networkers, your biggest asset is actually fellow students.
Wow.
So you have to be super careful as well with how you relate to your fellow students. You cannot be rude to them, because that's all they'll remember when they actually get to those big positions. It's the same thing I tell my fellow colleagues in the academic sector. You cannot be purposely rude to a student. You cannot be purposely, because you have this small power right now as a lecturer. It doesn't make any sense. You cannot be purposely rude to them, because the way that the world works is that the next day that student will be your boss, right? That's just the way they work like that.
I don't know, I could say sadist lecturers, like it was.
I've never understood that. Just on a personal level, there's no need to be rude to anyone, to be outwardly cruel to it. It just, I don't get it. Like, why are you cruel, But on a more important level, on a selfish level, don't do it, because the world is round and it always comes around, right? So it just networking, and that's part of it. I network with my students all the time. All the time I network with my students, because I know that they're such an asset moving forward. I network with my fellow colleagues because I know that, and I also network vertically and upwards because I know that's important too.
Yeah, and I think now as we are moving to our close, your values, what have kept you, and one of the things I'm taking from you is that you are really a kind person. I mean, the fact that you took me out for that mentorship program we were under, and now that you've allowed yourself to come, and host this, and what are your values moving forward?
Yeah, I think my values, number one is like I pointed out, the liberal values of especially listening, accepting, and tolerance to different ideas. I think that's one of my values that I'm continuously working on. There are some ideas that are so bad you want to dismiss them at the onset, but you train yourself to listen a bit more. But the other values that I actually care about, two of the biggest values I care about is, the first one is hard work, and the second one is commitment. I think, when most people ask me, how is it, I was actually having a conversation with one of my friends, my flatmate, and she said, Emmah, how would university, I mean, your classmates in high school, how would they view you? If they hear now where you are in your life, would they believe it? And the truth is probably no.
Same here.
Not because I was crazy in high school or something like that, but I wasn't necessarily the smartest.
Yeah,
I wasn't necessarily the best. I was just above average in that particular way. But I guess it's just hard work. It's really hard work. It's not just those boring things we tell, parents tell their children every time, you gotta work hard and all that stuff, and you gotta be committed. No, but it really is something that I really, really believe in. It's the one thing I think the worst sin in the entire world is indolence. Laziness is absolutely the worst sin in the entire world. It is completely unforgivable to be lazy. I think it's completely unforgivable, and you must be committed. Obviously, with commitment, that's the only way that it works. You've got to be persistent. You have to be committed to what you do. One of the things when I came back from my master's, and I really was trying to figure out, should I be applying for jobs and things like that, and I started applying for jobs, and I applied for so many jobs, for so many jobs at some point, and nothing was coming through, and I would apply to 50 or to 60 jobs, and there was a time I was super frustrated, and I went and I laid out on the sofa, and I told my mom, I am done. I am done with this bad economy that the government has brought to us. I am done. I can't come. I've studied so hard. I can't come and I'm jobless. Oh God, I am so done with corruption and favorism and tribalism. And I went on a whole rant of it. And my mom said, you gotta apply. Are you done? Okay, go back and apply. Like you have to continuously do. You have to be persistent. You have to be committed to your whole thing. That's the only way it becomes a skill. All of these things. I think there's so many people who are talented. That's the whole thing. Like there are extremely many people who are talented in this world. There's so many people who are talented. There are people who are way smarter than all lawyers combined. There are people who are more talented in terms of singing. Some people who sing until you cannot understand the kind of songs. It's amazing. They would paint and they would do all kinds of things. There's so many people. Some would run, would take off in a track field and run and just be amazing at it. And yet they just amount to nothing. And I think ultimately what makes the difference is the commitment. It's working on that talent until it becomes a skill. So just that to me. So for me, it's hard work and commitment. There's nothing. I completely unforgivable to be lazy. It's actually it's the easiest thing to do, right? Just work hard. There's really nothing hard to that. Just work hard. Put in that effort. Put in that extra effort to really, really work hard. My high school teacher. So I was terrible at math. I was extremely bad at math. Yeah, completely. Like I was the worst in math. I couldn't understand it. It didn't matter what I was doing. I was bad in math, and it never made any sense because I was the best in history. I really could retain all kinds of information in history. I still can, but I couldn't just get math. I couldn't understand why anyone would ask a question. A bus leaves Nakuru at 10 a.m. and then the other bus leaves. So to hell with that question. They will meet where they meet. Like so what about that thing? So I never quite understood. I never understood the whole utility of those questions. Right? I was terrible at math, and there's a time we were given a cut. I got 2%, and reflecting on it, really sincerely, the only two, because she couldn't give me a 0. The teacher was too kind to give me a 0, but I deserved a 0. Now this is in the same sort of exam where in history I got 100%.
Wow.
Right, absolutely. The next person in history got 70%. I got 100. This is the same exam where in English I got 98%. The next person had 70%. Like it's ridiculous. And then in math I had 2%. And that one is just because the teacher was polite. And I was extremely frustrated, extremely depressed. And the maths teacher at the time, she said, maybe she was telling everyone, but I specifically took it as my own. She said, you know what? Just because you failed, if the other class, we were in the dumb class, right? So if the smart class, we were in the dumb class. The history CRE is always the dumb class. And so she said, if the other people are taking, if it takes them 30 minutes to understand a question, but you it takes you 60 minutes, it's fine. You'll eventually cross the finish line at the same time. It doesn't matter how long it takes, and that's the thing. We used to wake up at 5 a.m. in high school, and she said, if others are waking up at 5 a.m., you wake up at 4 a.m. Up until, I believe, about a year ago, I always used to wake up at 4 a.m. It became a habit.
Wow.
And for me now in high school, I used to wake up at 4 a.m. and I would do math questions till 5 a.m.
Wow.
Like that, right? It's hard work, it's commitment and things like that. And eventually, I mean, I didn't even get that A eventually, right? But the lesson I learned in putting in hard work and commitment, it's really served me well.
Wow.
It really has served me well.
I am
Yeah.
really glad you've talked about that, and I hope people are inspired to work hard on themselves. And maybe just the last question I will talk about is just which book specifically would you encourage someone to read that will change how they think and what they should do about themselves?
That is a fantastic question. There's so many books. I'm currently just finishing up a book by Daniel Branch called Kenya, and it discusses the history of Kenya. And I'm super frustrated. Literally the other day, I was reading at 10 p.m. and I walked into my flatmate's bedroom and I said, "Can you believe this land question? This is crazy. It's insane, right? This is what happened, and it's all historical. This question of redistribution, it's all historical." And I was extremely frustrated with the whole situation. So that I think that's a fantastic book. I think Daniel Branch does a fantastic job. I've met him before, and his thought process on how he wrote the book is this really fantastic thing. He put in a lot of effort and really well researched, and it all openly shows. So I guess there's that, and it comes easy because that's what I've been reading.
Because you've mentioned a couple of books as we are discussing.
Yeah.
So maybe a book that really changed you and helped you as you grow in your career, or something that really has been fundamental in shaping how you think about life and issues.
Wow, good books, they always have a way of challenging how you think, I'm just thinking, one of the first books I ever read in my entire life was Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. Come to think about it, sometimes I read it when I was in class 4, so there are some things I've openly forgotten, just like Chinua Achebe's trilogy. I read it when I was pretty young, and there's some things I've forgotten. But I guess it's really, I think of books like that because they are able to change my perspective, because they gave me a different way of thinking or a different level of life to reach. I think that's what good books always do, that, right? They open you up to different things, to different ways of lives, and then you sort of try to work towards that. So there's so many books. I mean, I'm very hard pressed to really pinpoint one particular book, and I know I'll regret after this is short, because I'll then say I should have said this book, or I should have said this.
No, it's okay.
This
You
other
can
book.
just send me, then I can put it in my description.
All right, yeah. But there've been several books that have essentially really changed my perspective on things. When I read Hillary Clinton's book, not this latest one, What Happened. I've read all her books, but it's really the first one, Life History, I think it's called, and really changed my perspective on how to approach politics, and just reading about her life and how she excelled in her own life really got me thinking about what potential things I could actually achieve in this world. It's that thing about the more you read about someone, the more you realize it's actually achievable. What they did is not so, you can actually do it. You can actually do it because they're just human beings like you, and they did it. And so that's what Hillary Clinton's book did for me as well. Just thinking about how to change the world for good, and that got me interested sort of in that. So there's so many books. I'm hard pressed to select one, to be honest, that is a must read, or rather that really fundamentally changed my life. But there's some books, I mean, when I think of Khalid Hosseini's A Thousand Splendid Suns, where he talks about the relationship between two women in Afghanistan as it was collapsing, and just this mother-daughter relationship that developed between two co-wives, as the case may be. And just the idea that these women, they worked and they supported each other, and they created some level of sisterhood, even though society expected them not to be able to collaborate because they were co-wives, but they still looked beyond that, and they looked beyond what the society expected of them, and they still collaborated. I mean, that's a fantastic book, Khalid Hosseini. I read it and I was just, I mean, blown away. I've always read all his books now, and it's really A Thousand Splendid Suns that really stands out for me, and also that it really showed me the life in Afghanistan, you know, that it's something that I wasn't familiar with as well. So there's so many books. I mean, a lot of, specifically, I'm biased towards African fiction, and I'm specifically biased towards African women authors. So I'll definitely throw in a Chimamanda inside there. I'll definitely throw in a Taye Selassie inside there, and a couple of others. Lola Shoneini with Babasegi's Wives. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, because each of these books have been instrumental in changing how I think. They've not just been for entertainment value, but they've also really inspired me across the board. But I will reflect more on that question, because maybe there's a book or two. It's interesting though, the more you read, the more you realize they're actually very, very good books, you know, outside here. So yeah, Toni Morrison's Beloved is a fantastic read. So there's so many books, many books out here. Yeah.
I mean, I can say today there is information overload or wisdom overload. Thank you so much for gracing my channel. It was a pleasure having you. And in case you remember anything you didn't say, just
I'll definitely do that. I'll be like, no, please put this book, give a shout out to this book and stuff like that. I'll do it.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was really nice having you, and I look forward to more collaborations with you, especially in the field of human rights.
Definitely.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me as well.